Mr. Mithun Sundar, Chief Transformation Officer, Microsoft India. Mithun Sundar currently leads transformation for Microsoft India. Prior to this, he was the CEO of Lending Card, the largest and fastest growing small trader fintech company in India. His earlier experience includes leadership roles in e-commerce, Myntra, consumer packages goods, Unilever, PepsiCo, and consulting, McKinsey and Company. Mithun is an experienced business leader with a demonstrated track record of leading growth, profitability, and transformation in fintech, consumer technology, and consumer packaged goods companies. Lived and worked in several countries including the USA, China, Brazil, Indonesia, Vietnam, and India.
How is AI and the future of AI really powering both the industry and our lives? When I think about AI, I can't help but think about it in the context of the last 18 months that all of us have gone through. We've had a terrible pandemic trouble a lot of us in multiple parts of our lives. But it has also resulted, the last 18 months, in my opinion, has resulted in a sea change in almost every industry, not just, one or two industries. Every industry has changed dramatically. If I take healthcare, the adoption of telehealth, my own dad, 76 years of age, today is able to consult via a quick phone call on WhatsApp or on Teams or on Zoom. We today are no longer scared if we walk out of the house without our wallet because, the phone has become the wallet, and that requirement to have a credit card or cash has gone away out of the window today in India, in the smallest of places. I'm able to walk up in the Chennai beach and buy, peanuts off a peanut vendor and pay that person with a scan of a QR code. That is the kind of shift that we've seen, which has been tremendously accelerated in a country like India in the last 18 months. My own habits have changed dramatically. I today, don't really think about what I'm doing in a sort of structured manner. It's way more seamlessly interconnected across. And in that kind of a context, I see four large trends that are coming up in this world. From a business perspective, when you think of AI, when you think of hyperconnectivity, when you think of machine learning with data, think of all of these, I see four large trends. Number one, if I was in the space where you lead a company and run a company, how do you optimize yourself and how do you optimize your company for this new world where all work is going to be hybrid? That's your first big shift. The second one, every company lives and breathes for its customers and its consumers. How do you help your customers to build a truly hyper-connected business? And what does a hyper-connected business mean? And I'll get into that in a bit. The third is, how can every business become a digital business? Sometimes we think of some businesses as digital and some businesses as not digital. There are some which were born digitally native, but there are several which were not born digitally native, but which are truly becoming digital business today. How can every business become, a digital business? And then how do you protect all of this in a world where you and I can't meet each other, where I cannot do a handshake with the audience that I'm today speaking to? How do you really trust that what we are seeing and what we are getting and what we are doing is truly secure on an end-to-end basis? So four real things, right? New world of hybrid work, building a hyperconnected business, being able to help every business become a digital business, and managing it with end-to-end security. For me, these are the four aspects which span across this hyperconnected AI-driven world as we think about what we intend to do with the future. Let me get into all of those one by one. But before we go there has been a word, and today, given I work at Microsoft, I'm sure a lot of you have read the recent news which broke out about the metaverse and how we are collaborating with a couple of other large tech companies to truly change how we live in the metaverse. So what is the metaverse? Let me actually lift the AI conversation one level higher. We all live in the universe, but we are now slowly moving to a place where we all live in what we are calling the metaverse. It was first imagined a long time back as a word, but the metaverse is essentially this place where it allows you to have shared experiences across both the physical and the digital worlds, across people, across places, and across things. It's, when you're completely in the metaverse, it has a comprehensive set of resources that you will leverage to be able to live and work and do things in it. You will have potentially, things like an AI avatar, which is able to, at points in time where you're not present, is able to have your own AI avatar show up and be able to conduct what you do. It will have access to all kinds of information at your fingertips. And it will be a place where people are able to be partly physical and partly digital. Phygital is one of the words that I use, but that is where the world is heading at this point. And several of the companies have already made the leap, and lots of people and their ways of living plus the ways of doing stuff are actually getting towards the metaverse. When I say the metaverse, if I take a giant step back, think of it as both the medium and the app type. If I were to rewind back to the 1990s, what we are talking about is a mix of both what a web means or the internet means and what a website means. And the metaverse sort of combines both of those together to be able to allow people to be able to take that leap. Now, let me go back to the 4 pieces of points that I had spoken about, right? What does it take to build a truly hybrid way of working, right? What is it that we are talking about here? When I speak about hybrid work, I go back to my experience. When the pandemic broke out, I was based in Bangalore and I was leading a fintech company, which used to give loans to micro, small and medium enterprises in India. We had a pretty large loan book, almost 5,000 crores worth of loans out in the market. And overnight, everyone had to sit inside their homes. And when I say small and medium businesses, think of the businesses which are, on the street side, your Kirana store, a store which is sort of your cycle repair shop, somebody who runs a small computer internet browsing center or a peripheral store. These are the kind of people, one in Guwahati, one in Madurai, one potentially in Punjab, these smaller traders who had borrowed from our company and whose businesses were dramatically hit. What did we do to sort of be able to adapt to the hybrid work? There is the easy part and there is the tough part. The easy part is I used to go into office and all of us used to meet each other for meetings. We would sit in a meeting room and we would collaborate, figure out ideas, figure out what to do and think of what our new marketing plan is, what will the new product be, etc. We could move that very quickly indoors. We could all still work from home. We were privileged to be people who had access to, digital connectivity fairly seamlessly. So that part, while disruptive, was the easy part. All we had to do was we had to learn etiquette on how to manage hyperconnectivity and how to manage hybrid work in an AI-driven manner. But from there was the next step. What do you then do with your customers? The customers are people who live in the real world. So how do you use this hyperconnectivity to be able to manage those customers? We started to slowly get people on board. India is anyway now at about more than 70% smartphone penetration. And of course, our internet penetration is at a significant number with 3 and 4G coming in fairly quickly, with a lot of the players sort of coming up. So we were able to connect with our customers and offer them relevant services when they needed it. Now, what do I mean by relevant services when they need it? And this is where something like artificial intelligence comes into play. At an intuitive level, when I spoke about the types of companies or types of businesses we were lending money to, all of you know the kind of needs that they were having. The business had stopped. They were sort of struggling with cash flow. People needed to sort of pay out their employees. Employees were typically migrant. They had to move back to their hometowns. This was what was happening in the environment. Now, for these people, of course, you want to help everyone, but you have to also be prudent about it, which is where large data sets come in. When we spoke to any one business, what we used to take from them were about 6 to 12 to sometimes even 24 months of bank statements. Now you multiply that with the number of transactions that they have, then take their GST returns, then take 3 or 4 of their other statements. You're talking of close to more than 2 lakh data points for a single customer. You need to use those 2 lakh data points in an organized, efficient manner to be able to make an intelligent forecasting engine to decide how would you help that customer? What kind of a working capital loan would you give them? What other product financially? We were a fintech company, so it had to be financial products. What other financial products could we give them? What we were happy to do during that period, this is from March 2020 all the way to the end of the year, was we were able to collaborate with the financial ecosystem in this country, use the power of the data and the AI that it gave us with strong machine learning led models to be able to identify if there were 100 entrepreneurs, who would be those 20, 30 of them whose businesses were truly resilient even during a pandemic, to whom it made prudent financial sense to be able to extend the right working capital support. Second, for the balance 50-70% of the people for whom a working capital support may not be the right answer, we had insurance, which is a different financial product. Now, all of these couldn't have been invented sitting in a room without access to that 2 lakh data point per customer, leveraged with the right kind of artificial intelligence and machine learning for the models to learn continuously. It is not something where you and I can analyze and say this would be a good person versus this would be a bad person, because these are all remote customers sitting with different characteristics of data. That is what we're speaking about when we speak about hybrid work. And that was my own personal adaptation over the year 2020 as I worked through a very live business with about 5,000 crores in the market, Series E kind of a startup running fintech. Let me take another example, which was here I was talking about hybrid work. The second angle I spoke about was how do you build a hyper connected business? What do you mean by hyper connected? I'll go back to again a different example of mine. I've worked in the e-commerce industry for about 2-3 years, where I was in the fashion space with Myntra. I recently read this news about a company that started in the US, which guarantees less than 10 minutes to delivery. They're doing it in about 6 or 7 cities at this point, not across the country. But Amazon Prime, which offers you 30-minute delivery, now there are people offering you within 10 minutes delivery. Now, how do you make that happen in a cost-efficient manner? I'm sure if you place your entire warehouse outside every single apartment in every area, you can manage a 10-minute delivery, but how do you guarantee it? All of you may recall, at least I grew up in the 90s in Chennai. There was this 30 minutes or free guarantee, which was given by one of the famous pizza companies at that point. And back then it was revolutionary because everyone was stunned that somebody could deliver something in 30 minutes or you would get it free. And Indians are always ready for a deal if you can get a deal. So people used to try. And I used to live in a very crowded part of Madras called Chulemed, where it took a long time for any auto or bike to make its way through it. So I would test that 30-minute or free proposition quite a few times. And I was trying to say that 90% of the time they managed to get the pizza in time to the house when you ordered it. How do you do that? What you do is you build a connectivity from end to end. In the pizza business that I just described, the ingredients are already bought and sort of put up. Obviously, the base level would be for you to create the right kind of infrastructure and network of stores in the city. But the second level after that is to have predictive demand planning. If you expect your demand in a certain area during a certain period of time to spike, have you baked sufficient number of pizza bases for you to be ready? Doing this at scale across an entire country, doing this at scale across multiple regions with all kinds of variability. This is where artificial intelligence comes in, because this is where the limitations of human intelligence and our ability to process multiple variables starts to diminish. So we're not talking about AI as a new phenomenon. We are talking of analytics as an old phenomenon, which is being powered faster and faster by newer ways of learning with machine-based computing tools and artificial intelligence. And that would be the example that I give you for a hyper-connected business. Making every business digital, which was my third piece that I spoke about. I was recently speaking with one of our, while I was at Myntra, we used to source the garments that we sold from a lot of the brand name companies. Think of whatever you might wear, right? Any of the famous brand companies that sell sort of great clothes. Now, these companies started in a physical world, and we, Myntra, were the front end of their digital world where they were selling to consumers through us. Now, obviously, as time went along, they also wanted to directly reach their consumers. And one of the things about shifting to a truly digital company is they had to reimagine their own supply chain. What would it take for them to move from a style prediction all the way to supply within just 30 days, as opposed to the normal cycles, which used to be 90 days or even sometimes, close to half a year. If you remember back then, fashion seasons used to come only about 2 times in a year. Now the number of times you have a refresh in your wardrobe is actually significant. So how do you build a business which used to be, how do you take a physical business and make it a truly digital business? It could be applied to almost any industry. I've seen digital transformations happening in industries which we may consider to be very old world. The cement industry, for instance, some of the large players in India today have changed their entire sales force working based on apps that they have on their phone to be able to order multiple varieties of building materials, cement, integrate with other players who are offering the other pieces of the puzzle, which might be paint, masonry, all of those, and build that truly digital experience for their final customer. And it's a fully old world industry, but the digital part of it is the fact that their connectivity is going end to end, through and through. I'll speak about an example which is closer to heart. When we speak about artificial intelligence, we always think about something truly at the other level where we haven't yet experienced it. And I had the opportunity to work on something like that while at the e-commerce player that I was speaking about. He said, hey, listen, one of the biggest problems in India is that people buy clothes and they send it back because it doesn't fit them. Why doesn't it fit them? It's because, if I buy a large shirt from one brand the large that they call L in that is different from L in another brand, because maybe the shoulder is smaller, maybe the hand is smaller, maybe something else is different, but different people use large and medium and small differently. Second is different people also, if you say size 42, size 40, size 38, think of different sizes for each of those. In that context, what did we say we would do? We said, hey, listen, let us look at the data of all of our customers who have bought. If you have purchased a Jack and Jones shirt and you have retained it, that likely means that you're satisfied with the shirt that you purchased. Now, if Jack and Jones size 42 fits you, I can use my AI engine to say, tomorrow when you come back to my shop, when you look through all of the options that you have available on an e-commerce platform, I can tell you that if you suddenly stop at a different brand, not Jack and Jones, let's assume that you stopped at, let's say, Levi's. When you stop at Levi's, I can recommend you saying, please buy 41 on Levi's, because I know from my engine that has been trained over multiple years of many people buying and returning, that 42 Jack and Jones is roughly the same size as 41 Levi's. And my recommendation to you changes your experience of how you are able to choose that buy. And this here is AI truly in action. And this goes directly to the bottom line, because things you do not return to when you send something in an e-commerce player and then a return happens on the reverse direction, it becomes very, very difficult for the P&L to be able to sustain it. Avoiding that return means that it's a satisfied customer, so your satisfaction goes up. My cost of repicking it up, repackaging, re-putting it back together to sell goes down. My quality of the inventory that I hold up becomes much better. So in turn, actually giving you even better customer experience over time. And that is what AI powers you to do. The other example that I also had, and I'm using the same example because it's relatable Indian things we have all gone through. We were building it out and it's now starting to get live. There was another company which was creating a fit-based answer where they said, hey, listen, take a picture of yourself and allow me to analyze the full-scale picture of you. And I will then use that picture, and they give you a couple of positions to take it. I will use artificial intelligence to analyze that picture and give you two things. One is I can suggest to you what is the kind of outfit that may fit you. And two, what sizes and what brands do you need? This is the nature of how an AI-driven business can actually truly transform how we work in a business-driven manner. The last piece, and I'm also reaching close to end of time, so I'll just shortly touch on it. The last piece that I spoke to you was about end-to-end security, and maybe when we get to questions, I can sort of get deeper into it. The real question here is, how do you make sure that when we are interacting with people we can't touch and feel, when we are interacting with businesses we can't touch and feel, when we are interacting with products we can't touch and feel, and when our personal data is going to a company, how do I feel confident that one, there's security, two, that the security is actually based on access and rights that I grant and not something that's taken for granted, and three, that my data truly stays integral and does not get used somewhere else. And on that will be the fourth dimension of how a hyper-connected AI-driven world will be differentiated. Companies which do that well will truly make a big shift and sort of be able to achieve the next curve of growth. Companies that do that lesser well may not be able to get all the way there. Recapping, given that I'm at the end of my 15-20 minutes, recapping, number one, last 18 months, incredible change, not just for businesses, but truly for people as well. You and I today work very differently. You and I today live very differently from how we lived 18 to 20 months back. Lots of things which were originally physical have been dramatically accelerated to get into a digital world because we didn't have an option. Number two, in such a digital world, ability to be able to be really connected, have secure systems, use artificial intelligence, use machine learning to really, really power companies to the next curve of growth will be the differentiator between successful companies and lesser successful one. And number three, four areas where companies would need to sort of think about if they are truly going to embrace this. Number one of those four is, how do you adapt yourself to a new world of hybrid working? Number two, how do you make sure your business is hyper connected across end to end, from the raw material all the way through to the customer? And how does that data flow really make the experience a positive loop of the consumer getting a better experience? Number three, how do you make every business, whether it's physical or not, really a digital business? What parts of it really can be digitized? And four, how do you put the customer at the center to be able to ensure that security and trust never get dropped in the mix of doing all this? With that, Group Captain, let me hand it back to you. If you had any questions that you wanted to sort of share, happy to sort of pick them up.
Thank you, Mithun. Very, very inspiring and thought-provoking insight. short span of time, less than 20 minutes, you shared with us 4 new AI-driven world. The new world, what you said, the best examples of AI. More so, I really impressed with the example what you gave about pizza. Now I know how I get my pizza, not 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes itself. Hyperconnectivity. It's a great example. And yes, we have got number of questions come from large number of students. I'll try and pick up a couple of them for you to respond. Here's the first question. In an AI-powered world, how would we solve for trust and security? Basically, the fear is so much of data available in public domain in respect of financial services or otherwise. How do you make sure that every data available is secured? It doesn't impact the person who has shared the data in good faith.
See, I'll tell you something, Group. First is we need to recognize what world we live in, right? In the last 1 year, and this has been happening over the last year, 2 things have happened. One is the threat landscape has actually become better. So as people build, it's like the arms race, right? As people build better and better security, the hackers and the people who are sort of working in a negative manner, the sophistication of cyber attacks and the frequency of cyber attacks have really gone up. Okay, that is number one. Number two, they don't discriminate. It doesn't matter whether you're a very big company or you're a very small company. Even if you're a small and medium business, you are getting attacked in terms of your data being, because what has happened is people have understood the true gold. In the past, you would break into a jewelry store to steal gold because you could sell it. Now you're breaking into a company to steal data because you can sell it. There is a market for data, and data is the true new, what they said was data is the new oil, was what the line was. And I think this came up about maybe 5-6 years back, where data is the new oil because it is as valuable as it. Frankly, for me, in this sort of a thing, what matters is that you have to be able to do 2 things, actually 3 things. Number one, you need to first get the right infrastructure in place, whatever your company might be. Now, I work with one of the companies which powers, the infrastructure for a lot of other companies, but that infrastructure management, think of it just like a physical business. A physical business, if you don't get your construction right, you don't get your product quality right, you're never going to be able to survive. In a digital business, if your infrastructure, whether it is on-premise or more likely a cloud computing infrastructure, if that is not built on a secure platform, you're going to be at risk. So one is get your infra right. Typically, that would mean choosing the right cloud service provider and getting all of the infrastructure sort of set up in the right manner. Number 2, build a resilience within your organization, which is in the organization you work in, make sure that you're able to set up the right kind of both culture, process, training, checks and balance, all of those. Today, sitting at Microsoft, every month I have a reinforcing training on how do I act, which links do I click on, and you cannot control everything that comes to every employee. So what you want to do is make every employee represent the interest of the company the best. So in whatever company you're in, build that culture of keeping security as the number one, that would be the second thing that I would do. The third thing is actually just investment, right? People sort of think about security and data privacy almost as the last thought. You're normally only focused on your product and what you're selling to the customer. I would reverse that question. I think solving for risk is your first question, right? Because today you may have seen in the press as well, the company that I work in, which has an Indian CEO, Satya, has announced a very large investment to the tune of almost $20 billion on security itself coming up over the next 4 or 5 years. Now, typically businesses where you put your money where your mouth is, and that really starts to sort of pay off over time. Companies who have invested dramatically in product quality have shown outstanding products over time. Companies which invest in security over the next 4 or 5 years will show dramatic improvement in security and sort of trust over time. You need to decide where you want to put your investment. So those would be the 3 I call out to win, Group Kevin.
Thank you, Mithun. Here is another question from, again, the student. I think today the work from anywhere is the new concept. People are not thinking about it only from home or office. How do companies better adapt to this hybrid workplace that is here to stay? And what's your example personally in this field?
See, first of all, before we get to work from anywhere is an outcome of connectivity. And connectivity means today, if I'm sitting, and my business that I ran, when I was running the fintech company, the team size was about 1,200 people. We had about 5,000 crores. We were giving out loans across the country. My expectation, and this may sound unreasonable, my expectation as the CEO of the company, Group Captain, was that I want to know every piece of information updated up to the last minute, whenever I want, live. So you want it now, you want it at my fingertip, you want it up to date, and you want it conveniently. This is what people want. Now, hyperconnectivity and working anywhere comes after you've built the base for this. Once you have this, if this can truly happen for every employee, which is, can I get all the information accessible easily now and up to date without having to sit in a room and collect everyone around it and say, now you add those numbers, now you go collect this thing, you go count that thing, you go check in the warehouse. Without doing that, that is your first step to being able to work anywhere, because then only the parts of the business which need physical management need to be done in the location. The rest can be done remotely. The second piece is having the right kind of equipment to allow you to have those conversations. Right? Today, I'm using a state-of-the-art computer. So are you. You have a fabulous, virtual background. I've blurred my background while sitting at home. Now, this stuff is allowing us to speak. And this was unimaginable maybe even 6 years back. And today we all are connected. And this will only keep on improving. The next step on that evolution for hybrid work is I still don't have the full level of my connection that I would have if I was sitting in the same room with all of you, with you and with the audience. I would love for us to be able to get to a place where truly avatars allow us a true 3D experience of being able to experience that, right? That would be the second curve on that. The third on, people wanting to work from anywhere is, I think while it is true you can do 80-90% of the work anywhere, I don't think human connection is going to go away. So my own sense is we will continue to live in a phygital world. You cannot substitute the trust that is built over a human connection. For you over a game of golf, for me over a coffee or something. That would be the connection that you never can be substituting just because you're able to do it. So it would still have that balance, but that's how I see this going forward.
Great. Yes, you really get outdated if you don't get connected. I fully agree with you, Mithun. Here is another question, which is again from a management student from Chennai. Any example of companies which have truly leveraged AI for success in their businesses, and what learnings do we have from that examples?
See, I'll give a couple of examples. I think, in the, so I did speak about Myntra itself, and maybe one other example I'll give you from the Myntra world, because, a digital first company, right? So from the Myntra world, and something that I worked on myself was Myntra created an AI engine to predict fashion. What I mean by that is this sounds simple, but one of the biggest problems in the fashion industry is you will manufacture something, in March. And by July, August, people don't like that style anymore. And that style hence just sits in your warehouse, and only 20% of what you manufactured got sold. The balance 80% you have to write off. And this happens in the industry quite a bit. In fashion, it has two effects. One is your own business suffers. Two is the customer experience suffers because they are not getting what they want. Three is it is actually polluting for the environment. So not sustainable either, because you're writing off so much of waste, right? So this happens very regularly in the fashion industry. We set out to say, can we make a crack at it? What we did was today, with the internet, with Pinterest, with Instagram, with all of the shopping information that you have, people shopping on your own website, you can take all that data and you can actually predict in a real manner what is the trend moving towards. Are people going to buy more stripes or are people going to buy more dots? You don't need to do that sitting in a room and thinking. You can do that based on real info. We created an AI engine called Water, which was able to predict that. That real time gives information back to companies on what kind of styles they need to manufacture. That allows the companies to manufacture them just in time and then reduce the total wastage. So win-win-win everywhere, and the customer is getting what they want. We in fact had a couple of customers, a couple of the big companies buy our software product, and we call that product Water, which had powered a few of the large fashion players, including H&M at one point, which is the globally second largest fashion retailer. But that's an example of AI at scale. You see other examples too, Group Captain. I've seen logistics companies across the globe being able to use them at scale to be able to predict where is your biggest demand and supply going. I've seen it in trucking and car manufacturing companies. So Daimler, which was a global truck manufacturer, was able to embed a chip in every truck to be able to see what is the wear and tear and where is those things coming up, and then predictively solve for maintenance way ahead of times when the truck actually breaks down. So you're solving for predictive maintenance rather than post-active maintenance. And it is not that every truck has to be serviced every 6 months, because that will be too high a cost. It depends on where has it been used, where do you see the wear and tear, what early signals can you pick up, and then can you be able to solve for it. Those would be a few of the examples I would bring up, Group Cap.
I think great, Mithun, and I will add one or two questions, maybe a good rapid fire question. And the first question is, Microsoft being a global player that enjoyed extensive market penetration, which part of the world has actually been a challenge in terms of capturing the market, and why is it so? It gives an idea about how to deal with the world.
See, I wouldn't really call it a challenge, because we are present in almost 120 countries and doing, and it's one of the 3 companies today which have reached a certain largest company in the world size. I think really the importance for us is not about which part, and we don't really see the world as geographies, right? We actually see the world as, application usages and solution usages. So what kind of solutions are we able to offer? The world used to be with we used to have large server machines which would keep all of our data in one location. You move that to the cloud. What is the next level? The next level is going to be people to be able to work in the metaverse, truly collaborating with each other, half physical, half digital. So the challenge has always been, Group Captain, which is when you see the next curve coming, can you move the industry to adopt it faster than sooner? Some people are fast adopters, some people are slow adopters. 5 years back, everyone was saying the word cloud, but not enough people have adopted it. Today, there is hardly a company which is still on-prem. Everybody is on the cloud, right? So this is the difference that's happened in as little as 5 years. Now, when I speak about people collaborating in a metaverse, today, it seems a little remote. 3 years from now, we'll all be doing that fairly seamlessly. Now, who picks it up first versus last? That's the challenge. And it's not a geography-specific issue. It's actually mindsets of different industries which will pick it up or not.
One last question before we let you go. You briefly mentioned about metaverse, which is very, very exciting. When is it likely to be launched in India? Is it connected with 5G, or is it going to be part of the Microsoft's software, which you are going to be preloaded and given? How is it going to work? In brief, you can share. It'll be a great insight for us.
I would recommend that everyone go and read today's News Plus, or not today's, in the last weeks, and look for Satya's talk on it, because that will explain way better than I can. It is already launched. We have a collaboration with a large, company. Our collaboration software, Group Captain, within Microsoft is called Teams. The next version of Teams, or the more enhanced version, which truly allows collaboration in the metaverse, is called Mesh, which brings in both physical and digital with AI avatars, with a lot of features to be able to. It's already launched. It's in the market, and it has come out in the US. People are still adopting it, but lots is there in the press launch of it. I'm happy to share the link with you, Group Captain, if interested. But I would say just search on the web for Satya's latest, on what we have launched to the market, and you'll see the right double click on that.
Thank you, Mithun. It's always a pleasure to have you with us, and thanks for really sparing your valuable time to share your insights on this very, very important, relevant theme. Thank you, and stay safe. I think let's keep in touch as soon as possible.
Likewise, Group Captain, the pleasure is all mine. Any chance to interact with the MMA is always a pleasure, and I hope this is of value to all of the folks in the audience, and look forward to being in touch.
Mr. Ramanathan is a founder of Positive Integers Private Limited, a decision science company, and has been spearheading this company since inception. Currently, he is holding the position of CEO in Positive Integers. Earlier, he was holding the position of Director Analytics and Commercial, Vodafone AMEAP region, and as Chief Marketing Officer of Vodafone India. Mr. Ramanathan has a master's degree in commerce from Delhi School of Economics and a management degree from IIM Ahmedabad. He currently serves on the boards of companies like Tirumeni Finance Private Limited, Tata Communications Payment Solutions Private Limited, Positive Integers Private Limited, Tata Communications Transformation Services Limited, and Tata Teleservices Maharashtra Limited.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here, and I really thank MMA for calling me to address a very large group of students. It's always great to talk to this young lot, the curious ones, and such interactions really, in my opinion, as practitioner from the industry and sharing our real life experiences is a great way to whet the curiosity, and bodies like MMA play a stellar role in making this happen, and I'm sure they will do more and more of these, because in my opinion these kind of interactions give a lot more than what most books can teach, because in current generation people can learn by themselves. What we are doing is not teaching, but kind of lending our experience, sharing it to their lending ears. At the outset, I must say one thing. The topic is very, very new. It is all about data analytics, big data, data science, you call it whatever. But asking me to speak sounds a little anachronistic. So that is my first caveat. So I'm going to kind of give you a practitioner's view, not so much a technical view of somebody who is really doing the craft today, but somebody who is using the craft to make a difference to business problems. So the outset, to give you a context of what I opened with, is a very interesting quote. and I will lead on to saying the topic for the day. So I grew up in the current era, which is called the physical era, and I understand English and I speak English. The next generation is growing up in the digital era and they speak social. So welcome to the conversation around the transition from atoms to bits. So this is really what I'm going to be talking about, and what my understanding, it's really a conversation over the next 15-20 minutes or so. There is a fundamental tenet which is in my opinion kind of gathering ground over the past few years, and this is a very interesting way to look at the world. I call it the instrumented, interconnected, intelligent world. Welcome to it. Why I'm saying that? Instrumented because out of a global population of around 8 billion, we have 7 billion odd cell phones. Interconnected, you have global supply systems, technologies, communication, travel, and a classic case, all of us have been impacted of the so-called interconnected world is COVID-19. And intelligent, very, very interesting to note that, I don't know how many of you know this, in 2021, 2020 more like, the world had around 50 billion sensors. Projection by 2027 is this number is going to become beyond 350 billion sensors. So, which is why I believe that this intelligent, interconnected, instrumented world is the new world order, and is going to throw up three very interesting things. In the world of technology, it's going to be the era of ecosystems. What is it? An era of ecosystems is really about three principles. A, the world will operate through platforms. B, people will collaborate and compete. And C, data will be available to any and every company, because earlier, very difficult for small organizations to be in control, total control of their destiny. So these are three important changes which we believe will govern what the world order will be. And one driving force behind all of these is, I need to refer to terminology of Joseph Schumpeter during the Second World War and thereafter. This is the terminology called creative destruction, and is really what he, the terminology he used to explain this world shifting from unit production to mass production. What we are going to see is of a much larger magnitude, and that is explained by this terminology which you would have heard, Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 and 4.0. So let me just explain in very simple terms what that is, because that is really setting the stage for what we are going through today. 1.0 was the era where it was about unit production, very simple. So without getting into any techno speak, I'm going to simplify it. Industry 2.0 is really moving to mass production. Industry 3.0 is really bringing process efficiencies and automation and information technology to redefine production and scale. But Industry 4.0 is defining fundamentals at the basics. 4.0 is about three principles again. A, ubiquitous internet. B, availability of sensors which are very powerful and at the same time very inexpensive. And finally and most importantly, it is data available on the tap. So now all of these forces brings three important, what I call rules by which companies and businesses will exist, and those three are this. First, every organization in this new world order has to digitize. The second is about interoperability and connected players. Third is about big data, which leads to mass customization. So if you look at all of these, there is one connecting thread, and the one connecting thread which defines these three pivots is really big data. So now coming to the topic, let me define first what is big data, right? So first let me give you the what I call that the purest definition of big data. So there are big data is defined on 4 V's. First V is volume. Volume has again three ways to illustrate the magnitude of volume. One, we have more than 7 billion cell phones alone, which is a source of data. The second, we have 1.5 billion cars with 100 sensors each, which again is a source of data. Third, most organizations today have almost 100 terabytes of data within their ambit. So this is just to illustrate the scale or volume of data that is available today. This is the first V. Second V is variety. Again, I will illustrate through two examples. We have nearly 30 billion instances of content posted on Facebook, for example, in a day, and 4 billion hours of video on YouTube alone. So this is just to give you a flavor of the variety of data that gets generated. Third, the third V is velocity. Velocity is, again, I am illustrating it to say how do we understand velocity. A, there are nearly 20 billion network connections operating concurrently, number one. Number two, again another example, nearly 1.5 terabytes of data is generated in every trading session. So if you combine these are all meant to be illustrative and a sample of a large data set. So when you look at the full picture, you can just understand the kind of numbers and the variety and the velocity of data we are talking about. The fourth V, which is very, very important, is veracity, which is the accuracy. This is where the rubber hits the road. Most companies and most businesses today have a problem with veracity. Two illustrations again. The US government, I just gathered through secondary data, the US government loses a couple of $1 trillion a year on account of inaccurate data, lack of veracity, for example. And the second thing is you're really talking about responses where you're seeking any company, for example, you would know. A company goes out and seeks responses from customers. And most of it is in the interactive space today, right? So in the interactive space, the level of accuracy of data in terms of responses is below 20%. So when you look at connecting all of this, 4 Vs, you're really dealing with the mammoth-ness of data as defined by a purist. I will just round it off by saying only one thing. All of you would know Eric Schmidt, the executive chairperson of Google. He gave one data point to kind of highlight what I'm trying to say. From the dawn of civilization to 2003, the world had only 5 exabytes of data. Right now, we are generating the same number every 2 days. So wherever data is there, analytics cannot be far behind. So welcome what I call to the measurement economy. So when you have data, analytics cannot be far behind. And if you have to do analytics, a computer cannot be far behind. But this is the interesting part. A computer can process, can store, can retrieve, can generate patterns out of the data. It will need a human touch, it will need a human brain to lend a flavor to that data. And in my experience, I feel every enterprise's data is a treasure of stories. So a human touch is needed to convert the data into a story. When data tells stories, you have something of interest to a decision maker. So I believe the world of data and analytics is both a science and an art. Now I'm going to get into the next part, which is really to explain what does the spectrum of analytics include. Again, I'm going to make it very simple. The entire data analytics has 4 pillars. The first one is called the data engineering pillar. The data engineering pillar is very simple, no techno speak. The data engineering pillar is the one which cleans, stores, retrieves data that can be processed and used by business. So there is a lot of skills here around database management, programming and all. These are all the necessary skills that go there. But the end outcome of all this is really providing a platform or a handshake to business to take it forward and process it. So the second pillar is data visualization. In very simple terms, data visualization is the process of transforming large data sets and templates and data structures into easily readable graphs and formats. So what goes into a visualization are two things. You have a strong data engineering layer that creates a data mart. Now that data mart in conjunction with strong wireframes allows you to create graphs, views which are very nimble and easy to use and comprehend. What does this activity do? It helps generate insights and help generate consume data in a meaningful and easy to use way. This is the second pillar. The third is the analytics layer. Now this is the interesting part. Analytics, there are three types of analytics that happens. There is descriptive analytics, there is predictive analytics, there is prescriptive analytics. Descriptive analytics is all about knowing what has happened. Predictive analytics is using largely historical data on the back of techniques to tell you what will happen. Prescriptive analytics is all about telling you how to make the prediction happen. So here is where AI, ML all come and sit. All these are advanced techniques which are largely a part of the prescription process. AI is nothing but a simulation of human mind which gets built into machines and built for scale. I am just simplifying definitions so that it is easy to understand. Now when it is built to scale, simply a human mind cannot deal with that scale and complexity. So AI brings in both narrow intelligence which is repetitive, wider intelligence which is more recognition of patterns and behaviors. ML in terminology is a subset of AI. It primarily looks at data from machines which are historical in nature, and the machine learns on its own through experience with greater and greater data sets. Important to mention here that all business problems does not need advanced analytics for a resolution or a solution. It is absolutely important to have the right problem, applying the right technique to get the right performance at a model level to decide which of these techniques become important, and that obviously is in the context of whether the problem needs prescription or the problem needs prediction. So this is the third part of analytics. So all these where all the buzzes around AI, ML, things like that are largely consigned to the third bucket, which is the analytics bucket. It's not over. The fourth one is really action. Action is primarily what I am saying is that you built a solid data engineering layer that allows you to clean, process and take the data for further work by the business. Now that is acted upon, you create reports, you see, get insights. Some of those insights point you to problems, those problems need processing and pursuit. Those pursuit will be on the back of advanced analytics techniques. All that will lead to saying, hey, this is what something has to be done for solving a future problem. Now that needs to get converted into an action, which is primarily in an organization's last mile. Now this action has got a large business interface. So in summary, you have these four large buckets which constitute, in my opinion, the entire analytics spectrum. If I were to summarize it in a sentence, this is really about seeing the full spectrum of converting data to information, to insight, to intervention. So data is something which is raw. Intervention is when you have crystallized it, processed it and you act on it. So this whole process, in my opinion, is what I would call as the entire analytics spectrum. Now when I say this, it should be obvious to you that there are three very disparate capabilities that come together to make somebody tick. there is a very, very important aspect of understanding technology in computing. There is a very, very strong lineage of mathematics and statistics one needs to have. And finally and most importantly, you need a huge underpinning understanding of the business. So we believe that this converged view is the fulcrum of data analytics, the converged view between domain knowledge, technology and math. This converged view, in my opinion, is the fulcrum of any data analytics, data science work a company can do. If you don't have it, you can do great math, you can have great technology, you can have the best of products and licenses, but you won't be able to make it hard work for you as an entity. So this primarily, in my opinion, is how I would look at the skill sets, right, to make somebody perform, succeed in the analytics journey. So if I were to kind of bring it all together, and if you see the whole process from the context of where we are, what is the world order we are dealing with, the era of digitization, the era of plethora of data, simple. Analytics is absolutely a way of conducting business, is going to be a way of life. There is no escape from that at all. So in that sense, people and organizations do not have the license or the luxury to decide whether this is something they need to do or can they postpone. This you either shape up or you ship out. There is no other alternative for organizations in this new world order. Now if this is how the world and the world of business is shaping, what is the survival kit? What does somebody need to do to survive in this kind of a thing? I want to talk about primarily two things. One is I want to talk about the education of today and tomorrow, and the second aspect of that is about employability of today and tomorrow. Education of tomorrow is this. All of us in our times, in my generation, placed a premium on knowledge. I don't know I'm sure most of you would know and have heard of Nicholas Negroponte, the founder of MIT Labs. In fact, in his last interview, I think you can actually check the last TED talk of his when he was past 70. He said that knowledge is a zero-sum game. Human beings eventually will have chips on them, there will be no premium on knowledge. This is a fundamental tectonic shift of what we are used to versus what the world is going to be. So if knowledge is on the tap, the defining thing is what you do with the knowledge, which becomes very important. Now in that context, you must understand every new technology and anything that comes together in the recent era has very, very strong and quick obsolescence rates. So a very important change has happened in terms of from an education standpoint and a preparedness from kind of my generation to now, is that it's absolutely okay to fail. It's absolutely okay to make mistakes. In fact, there is a premium on making mistakes and failing. So if you have to fail, fail soon, fail fast and fail big. There is no problem, because we would think that this is the best way to learn. So from a principles of education, I think there are three important things. The world will see more peer-to-peer learning. The world will see customized learning, and the world will see universal access. Here is a simple example of universal access. All of you would know of the founder of Andrew Ng of DeepMind, probably the father of AI. He has already educated, he has already shared and taught 100,000 people online virtually for free. Now that is going to be the new world order. There is no premiumness on physicality. So the so-called big institutes commanding huge premium, I think there is an expiry or a use by date. So this is what is going to happen on education. From an employability standpoint, I think the problem I see is even more stark. I think the defining change I am seeing, or I would like to believe will happen, I think the world will move clearly from generalists running this world order, making way for specialists. It is not so, in fact, very interesting. There's a management school where I had gone to speak, and I was talking to management students, and I felt that management education, I really think at some point will get completely re-engineered. I feel if human beings don't need to be supervised, we need to figure out what is the role for management. I don't know the answer, but it's $1 million question. But clearly I see the handover of baton from generalists to specialists. Now, I'll just kind of summarize it in all of this by kind of bringing a very interesting quote Vinod Khosla made. He said there are 10 sensors in the cell phone, there are 100 to, in fact his actual quote is 400 sensors in the car, but there are no sensors in the human body. A day is not far when you're going to have it. So if every one of you has to have a sensor, just make sure you have the curiosity sensor in your body.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for your thought-provoking insights on the theme relevant to AI, ML, and IoT. And I'm quite sure the students will be kindled the thought process to really understand what exactly it means for them. And we have received a number of questions relevant to the theme. I'll place it before you to respond to each one of them as appropriate, please. You spoke about education of tomorrow. And your question in this regard is, the certification obtained by way of online system of education, is it as valuable as regular courses, or should the students go for degree programs in analytics, ML, and IoT? Are there enough counselors available to guide the students on suitability and selection of such courses? Your views, please.
So the way I would like to answer it is, I'm not going to make a typical answer to that. The first thing I want to do is we need to make a distinction between knowledge and learning. All the methodologies today, whether it's certification, online, physical, is in my opinion giving a foundation to a student. Now, obviously we need to be discerning enough to figure out who is giving you a good foundation. But the way I will explain it is as follows, right? In our experience in real life, this is a 6 to 7 year, the maximum experience I come across amongst good analysts, data analysts, is between 7 to 8 years experience. And 7 to 8 years, they have probably worked in 3 to 4 companies. So in my opinion, what do we look for? We obviously are not looking for ability of somebody to figure out what they have done in 7, 8 years to make an impact to our business. We are really looking for people who have the agility and ability to pick up the business on the fly and make an impact in 2 years. In our times, you could give somebody a luxury of 4 or 5 years to impact. In this generation, in this field, we need to have an impact on the ground in 6 to 8 months. So that is the fundamental difference. We are looking for somebody who can come and learn in our environment, embrace the business, embrace the domain, apply capabilities and stay cutting edge, bring it all together in 6 to 8 months. So that is the craft we are looking for. Finally, I will simplify it as make it analogous. All these methods by which you acquire your knowledge is like learning a language. What you come and pick it up in my business and the nuances of the domain is bringing grammar to your language. So if you do not bring grammar to your language is of no use. You need to bring it both together.
It is a perception or reality that technology adoption is more faster in service industry than manufacturing industry. The question is relevant because you spoke quite a lot about the reference to Industry 4.0, where the adoption of Industry 4.0 is very relevant post-pandemic. So what's your view on this?
Absolutely right. Services have embraced, technology, data much more quickly than manufacturing. Fundamentally because there is also a balance sheet side of impact to doing this. Here we are talking about making large investments in machines and making machines compatible, organizations compatible, and that IoT is a very, very important part of 4.0, and that absolutely resides within the spectrum of manufacturing. So what it also does is it asks for a departure and a fresh thinking and making risks. It moves somebody away from a comfort zone from a manufacturing standpoint. Whereas in services, it's very easy for an organization to test, try in smaller spaces of impact before it can kind of go national. For example, we did some work with a consumer product company. It's absolutely easy to isolate the influence to around a geography of 100,000 people, 10, 15 distributors, pressure test it, figure out, measure the impact, and put all the test conditions, and you can kind of unlock these concentric circles from 100,000 to 500,000 to 1 million to 10 million to 5 crores, right? So it is very easy to do in something like that, whereas in manufacturing your change has to be wholesale and there has to be belief that it will happen. Now everybody wants to be in the gravy train, but somebody has to take the call to kind of be sitting in the front to drive it. Now that is where I think the crunch is, because today the narrative in organizations is there a payback on this effort? Tomorrow, if you don't have any other way of doing business other than this one, organizations will fall in line. Even now, the current narrative is business analytics paying back? Is data analytics paying back? They look at an investment, they want a payback in a reasonably short period of time. Tomorrow, organizations will either exist or become extinct without embracing it. So has it become an existential one? It is not. So my view is that it will eventually fall in line, manufacturing will get in, but it's a slightly more difficult decision to take.
There is a lot of misinformation and lack of understanding in the application of big data. Could you please explain what is big data and how it is related to IoT, and how does ML relate to AI, please?
So big data, I have given earlier a technical understanding of how is big data defined, but let me again give you how we view it as a practitioner. Let me simplify it. Data has got only two facets. A, is the data within the enterprise or outside the enterprise? B, is the data structured or unstructured? When you say structured, is it in rows and columns in a database? It's not. So it is simply put a 2 by 2. To me, data is distributed in all the 4 quadrants together constitute big data. In current parlance, how it is understood is largely when people use big data, they refer to the quadrant of what we call unstructured external data, which is primarily data in the world of internet. Now, because that data is in different file types, in different formats, and if you ask me, there is both noise and data in that, so it is a lot of challenge, but that is where the nuggets are. So any work on that is very important, but having said that, working on data on all the 4 quadrants together constitute big data. IoT is a part of internal structured data. It is available in machines. The moment you put sensors into machines and you start capturing the data, the machines talk to each other and the data gets generated. So to me, it is like keeping data in a database. The machine generated data is technically an IoT. It works through sensors that can be captured in a database for further processing.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for sharing your insights and responding to all the questions. Indeed, oblige and look forward to seeing you more at MMA. Thank you so much.